I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Paradise Recreation and Park District. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call?
Sorry, give me a minute. Gotta process this. Director McGreen.
Here.
Director Belfay.
Here.
Secretary Rodwick.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Goodland.
Here.
And Chairperson Anderson.
Here. This time I'd like to welcome guests here and online. Looks like we have a presentation with Jim McCourt.
Yeah, Jim, come on up. Yeah, this is we've been trying to do this on an annual basis, a little check-in on our investments with Meter Investments, and just welcome, Jim. We'll bring up the you do have information in your packet too on the report.
It's on the packet.
Oh, it's not the packet.
I printed two different
On your desk. Hey, Jim, can you press a button on there? Yeah, thank
There
you.
we go. Thanks, Dan. Should have two different handouts in front of you, a PowerPoint on the investment strategy update, and then the actual December monthly investment statement. We'll go over both of those as well. But thanks again for having me in here. Completing my 2-day tour of Paradise here. I was at the town council meeting last night, and then earlier this afternoon over meeting with Brett Goodland at the irrigation district. So glad to be back presenting on the investment portfolio. The first few pages in here, I'll try to give you a market update. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but I think it's important to set some context of what's going on in the marketplace with interest rates, Federal Reserve policy, what's affecting rates, and really that's essentially what then directs the interest or investment income that you're going to be making on this portfolio. So as I mentioned, when I was here in December of 2022, which was right after we initially built this portfolio in November of this year, it turned out to be just an absolutely fantastic time for your initial investment in this portfolio. It was a recently high point in interest rates, which has really let you set the stage for developing a sound long-term plan for these investments that you have now. When we're looking at this economic update here, and on the year in review, have a few different things that have gone on in the marketplace and so forth to affect rates throughout the last year. But the main thing has really been the Federal Reserve's policy on the federal funds rate, their monetary policy, which has really since March of 2022, they had aggressively raised rates to combat inflation that really developed out of all of the stimulus that came out of the pandemic. So as that made inflation so prevalent in the economy, this Fed started lifting rates off of zero aggressively up to the range of 5.25% to 5.5%, right, where they are right now on the federal funds rate, and in order to combat inflation. So if you're looking at the second page on here, when you look on the interest rate curves, the Treasury yield curves, this just gives you some context visually, yeah, right here. And we'll walk through this sequentially to show you how much rates really have changed since the Fed got on this aggressive tightening cycle of trying to be restrictive to the economy to slow down inflation. With this red on the red line, that's where interest rates were at the end of 2021, before this portfolio was invested, when the Fed was still at zero on their target federal funds rate and interest rates across the curve were barely up to 1%. But throughout 2022, as they started to raise those short-term rates, you can see how much yields across the curve. We're still on that page right there. How much rates across the curve were increased into the green line of December 2022. Fast forward to October there in the dark blue line, October of 2023, which really turned out to be the high point in rates across all of the curve. So as you continued to invest bonds throughout this last year, you were investing at those even higher rates. And then during the last line on there is the light blue line, which is where rates ended up at the end of the last calendar year, end of 2023. You can see what we have there is an inverted yield curve, meaning that short-term rates are still up in that 5.25% range where the federal funds rate is, but out along the yield curve, rates have started to move a little bit lower. And that's because of the expectation of slowing inflation now, finally slowing potential growth down the road, and the market's expectation that the Fed will begin to start to cut rates again at some point this year. So the more that we are able to get out and lock in these yields in the 3, 4, 5-year range with these investments that we have for the district's portfolio, that will be super beneficial to be locking in that income in the face of whether it turns out to be recession or not. But inevitably, we're looking at an economic slowdown here coming, which will result in the Fed reducing rates to try to be more accommodative to the economy again and not be so restrictive like the high interest rate policy that they have right now. Going on to the next page, with that same vein of central banking with the Federal Reserve, although the market has been anticipating rates coming here at some point this year, the Fed themselves were not actively talking about it until November when Fed Board Governor Waller started talking about really an academic approach to what would make sense to start reducing interest rates. And what we're looking at here is the expectation that core inflation, the core PCE, is starting to decrease. And so even with them just maintaining rates where they are right now, they are in effect still applying increased restrictiveness, because when you take the real rate of inflation or the real rate of interest rates, which is the nominal rate less the rate of inflation, that implied effectiveness or implied restrictiveness there, you can see, is still increasing if the Fed does nothing. So as inflation starts to decrease, they need to start to decrease interest rates as well, just to keep more of a neutral stance on what they're doing with the economic policy there. Getting a little bit in depth into Fed policy, but that's just some of the background on why we believe that the Fed will start to reduce rates here. On the next page with inflation, you see a similar story. On the left-hand graph there, it's different measures of the core PCE, the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, which is what they've primarily been trying to reduce toward that target level of 2%. That horizontal red line, the 2% target level. You can see for the last couple of years now, we've been well above that target with where inflation has been, whether you're looking at year over year or the 3-month or the 6-month rate. But all measures of that are starting to trend more toward their target 2% level. Again, giving them the confidence that they've been effective to slow down price pressure because of these high interest rates, so that eventually they can relent on that a little bit and start to allow rates to go back more toward a neutral level again. Going to the next page, the leading economic indicators here. So for the most part, the economy over the last year or so has been surprisingly resilient in the face of these high interest rates that we've had. Inflation's been coming down, but slower than expected. The labor market has still been very tight, relatively strong, and a lot of measures of growth have still been surprisingly resilient. However, when we're looking at the leading economic indicators there, which is an index produced to show sort of predictive aspects of how the economy will react, different measures go into this: manufacturing starts, housing starts, the stock market, the shape of the yield curve, consumer expectations. A lot of different things go into this index. But what this graph on the left is showing is that every time over the past several decades, when we see this leading economic index start to dip, it tends to be shortly before a period of recession. Those vertical blue bars are periods of recession. So going back, every time we've seen that dip, that is typically shortly before a recession begins. What we're now in, though, is a period of 20 consecutive months of that leading economic index continuing lower and lower and lower, but we haven't yet seen that recession start to materialize. However, this group that produces this index is calling for a slight recession to hit the economy here at some point at the beginning of the year. And whether that happens or not, whether we get into technical recession or how deep it ends up being, really the point is that that slowing growth will likely result in the Fed starting to lower interest rates. So we want this portfolio to be prepared for when that starts to happen. The way we fight against that is to keep duration in the portfolio, locking interest rates in that are available right now that are higher than we've seen at any point over the last at least 15 years, to keep those in and be maintaining these rates so that if the Fed does start lowering rates, your interest income does not just disappear immediately with that. So that's my long-winded background on what's going on in the markets right now. Getting into the portfolio. On the next page here, here's the district's investment portfolio that we are managing as of the end of the calendar year. So that 34.659 million, that's the book value of all of the securities that are held in custody at U.S. Bank. So we're making the investment decisions on those purchases in conjunction with talking with Dan and his team about the cash flow considerations of the district. And then those securities are all actually held in custody at U.S. Bank. So we don't touch those. We don't touch the cash. We don't touch the securities. We're making the investment decisions. Brokers deliver those bonds to your custody account in the district's name at U.S. Bank. The weighted average maturity. So you have a bunch of different securities in this portfolio, some maturing very closely, some maturing out to 5 years. The weighted average maturity of all of those bonds is there at 2.35 years. The weighted average yield to maturity, and we manage over 350 public agency portfolios around the country, and that 4.68, I believe, is the highest of all of them that we've managed. So that's, again, speaks to the fact that you guys got into the market at an extremely good time, which will help benefit the income of this portfolio for the long term. The maturity distribution there on the bottom shows, looking at visually on an annualized basis, where that $34.6 million is invested. So it's not all in one block there. There's a bunch of different securities within those, but that gives you visually when those bonds are going to mature. So we have it spread out on that 0 to 5 year spectrum there. Now, a couple things I'll point out with the idea of trying to lengthen, get in some duration, locking these yields in, we would ideally like to get that 4 to 5 year bucket up a little higher than that, maybe up above 20%. But that's all within the context of the liquidity and the cash flow of what the district has the ability to tolerate. So this balance is actually about $2 million less than where you peaked a couple months ago. In October and then again in December, the district had to draw $1 million down. So as maturities or bonds are coming out of the portfolio, we have the ability then to just transfer cash back to your checking account to be able to pay the operating expenses. You've since received, as I understand, some of the tax money, property tax revenue in, got your bank balances up to a little bit more sustainable level here. So ideally, as we get some more maturities coming over the next couple of months, we reinvest them out longer, get that 4 to 5 year bucket up, and continue to lock in some of this future income. But the other thing that the attractiveness of this portfolio allows is that even if we got to a point where we needed to sell something from the portfolio, you have unrealized capital gains in almost all of your investments right now, because since you've bought these bonds, market rates have actually moved a little bit lower, meaning the value, what these securities are worth, is higher than what you paid for them. So you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of untapped liquidity available in the portfolio as well. The top right pie chart there just gives you a look at the different types of asset classes that you're invested in, all extremely high quality, liquid fixed income securities, and importantly, all compliant with California Government Code 53601 and the district's approved investment policy. Going to the next page then, the last of this presentation here, giving you a look at the fiscal year cash basis realized investment income. So this is really, out of all this presentation, this is probably what you care about. How much money am I actually making? What are we actually receiving here? When you look back at the last fiscal year, we started in November, so you only had seven months of realized income, but you had just about $440,000 in cash basis realized income brought into the portfolio, generated from just these securities. Then looking into this current fiscal year, the first 6 months in that lighter blue shade are what's already been realized. And that's about, I think we're looking at about 550,000 there. And then the darker blue are the projections based on what's currently in the portfolio. So these bonds that you already own, when they're going to pay their cash flows and how much they're going to pay. So the total for this fiscal year is approaching 1.15 million. And the thing that this does not include is that this is just if you do nothing else. If you do have the ability to continue to reinvest maturing securities, get back into the market, those will eventually continue to kick off more cash flows as well. So I would expect that number to actually increase from that a little bit. I was just running some projections today on the calendar year, not the fiscal year, but the calendar year 2024 would be more like 1.25 million. So you can see just that gradual increase if we're able to keep reinvesting into this current market that we have right now. So with the size of this portfolio, that's an extremely attractive realized investment income there. The one thing I'll also say is that this is just cash basis of what's actually coming in. We also buy a lot of these bonds at discounted prices. So you pay less than they actually mature at, which means that you have a lot of untapped income in there as well, which is essentially deferred into the future, which will help that income continue to increase. Even if we get into a market environment where rates start going lower, that helps that income stabilize and potentially continue to increase as well as those bonds mature. And then you realize those capital gains on those securities. So overall, I think you're really in a good position here. And then just the more we communicate with Dan and his team about the cash flows, that will just give us the ability to continue reinvesting this portfolio and continuing to generate the income for the district. Now, the second report that you have is the actual investment statement. I don't need to go through every page in here, but I would like to just highlight the different. I don't know if you get a chance to look at this on a regular basis or not. We issue this monthly to the district. The first page of it just gives you a general summary, similar to what I went through on that summary page in the presentation, of some of the key characteristics of the portfolio. The second section, page 3 through 7 or 8, is the detailed projected income. So again, we had that rolled up into the projections in the PowerPoint there, but this will give you every bond that you own, when it's going to pay, how much it's going to pay, followed by the position statement, which is an inventory of all of the assets you have, every single security that you hold. And important to note that these all reconcile to the penny with your custodian statement at US Bank. So we get a daily feed from US Bank to make sure that our system agrees with what US Bank is showing. So we have a clean reconciliation there to ensure that every penny is accounted for from this portfolio. And then the last several pages, starting on page 15, will be the transactions. So you have weren't any purchases in December as the district took a little bit of cash out, but when you have purchases, that's what will be in there. Purchases, sales, maturities, all the individual activity that happens over that last month, as well as then on page 16, the interest that comes in from each individual security. So that's it recaps all of the activity that happens there. Throwing a lot of stuff at you right now, but any questions on the markets, what we're seeing as far as strategy, what you're receiving from the reporting, understanding this, and any thoughts, comments, questions at all? Glad to take them now. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Let's go back and let's briefly discuss this distribution.
Yeah.
You indicated that on our behalf, you'd like to see the 4 to 5 year portion of this distribution enhanced, and I'm sure we're supportive of that concept. So where will that come from? Will that come out year 0 to 1 as those things mature?
Generally, yes, as the bonds mature,
Right.
It would just be reinvested out longer. Whereas over the last couple of months, as bonds have matured, we've had to just let them go to cash to go back to your checking account. And so that's why everything is just because every day, every bond you own ages a little bit more toward the
Right.
front of that portfolio.
Right.
So unless they're reinvested, everything just continues to shorten. And so that's why as the portfolio balance has declined, everything is just shortened a little bit more than we would like right now, given the market environment. But that's fine because liquidity is overall more important than yield on this for this. We want to make sure that you have cash on hand to pay the bills.
Well, that's true to a point.
Secondly, to your question, yes, we would look at opportunistically selling some of those shorter term investments and moving them out a little bit longer as well, not necessarily waiting for bonds to mature, but selling them before maturity. In most cases, you can take out capital gains doing that and then reallocating the proceeds out longer to lock in the 4 to 5 year bucket. But again, just with doing that, we don't want to oversell the short end to make sure that you have the flow of liquidity coming if the bank balance is getting low then.
So do you and our admin staff and anticipate doing that during this first quarter of this year?
I do think it would be wise to some extent do that to get that 4 to 5 year bucket up closer to that 20% range.
Okay. So hopefully the finance committee will be on board with that. Just I'm on the finance committee.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Good.
Well, I assume will be.
I take that as being on board with it.
Thank you.
Good questions.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So Jim, you mentioned about could you explain how we are able to purchase at discounted rates?
That's a
Some
good
of
idea.
those.
Yeah.
You mentioned that early on.
Yeah. So when a bond is issued by whether it's the Treasury or a corporation or an agency, whatever it is, it has a set coupon on it. And so that coupon is typically at a market level. So say if right now they want to issue a 5 year bond at 4% is 5 year market rates, it will typically have a 4% coupon. But if market rates start going up or down, the price of that bond as it trades in the market is going to go higher or lower. And so what we would typically do is buy below market coupons at discounted prices. And so you're receiving less coupon on a security than what a market rate is, but you pay a discounted price for it. You make it up for you're compensated for that in your yield by receiving the par value at maturity, which is the difference between what you paid for the bond and what it matures at. So that makes up the difference for accepting a lower market coupon there as far as the interest coupon that you're going to receive through the life of the security. One thing that does is that as bonds age, they always, because they age at par, the market value, even in whatever the market is environment is, it's going to eventually move toward par as the bonds go. That's where it's going to mature. So it gives us that flexibility for your situation. If we want to sell it as bonds are moving toward maturity and that price is going toward par, we can typically sell it for higher than we paid for it, then realize a capital gain then and give us the ability to restructure, to reallocate the portfolio. So to me, that's the advantage of taking that, of paying those discounted prices, deferring some of that income to maturity or when you would sell it then.
One more question, Jim. Last night you gave a presentation to the town council for the town of Paradise. Tell me this, did your firm help the town invest their proceeds right around the same time you did with our district in 20, or did they do it earlier?
They did it earlier.
Uh-huh.
So their yield is not nearly as attractive as this right now,
as well as ours.
just because of the timing of when
Wow.
they got into the marketplace.
Okay. Good to know. I just didn't know.
Yeah. So eventually, as the portfolio turns over, gets into the new marketplace, things will even out.
Right.
You get into current market environments then. But as they were set when they first got their $220 million settlement into the market, the Fed was still at 0. 5 year rates were less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the types of bonds that they were buying at that point. Whereas when you got in, you were buying mostly 4.5%, 5% bonds. So it was just luck of the draw. Turned out to be a good time to get into the market.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Ms. McCourt.
Appreciate it. I turn this off.
At this time, we will entertain public comment. We have one public comment online.
John S., are you ready to do your comment? All right.
I just wanted to thank Mr. McCourt for his very comprehensive.
Hang on, John, just a second. Can you give us a countdown, please?
Sure. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Sounds great.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to thank Mr. McCourt for his very comprehensible presentation and his excellent fiduciary maintenance of our public funds. And I wanted to also second Al's nomination for the Finance Committee later in this meeting.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to remove?
I'd like to remove item 3.1 for further discussion.
Do we have a motion to accept the other?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that we accept consent agenda items 3.2 and 3.3. I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Director McGreen,
Aye.
Director Belfay. Aye. Secretary Rodway.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Goodland.
Aye.
Chairperson Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes. Okay, I just wanted to pull the minutes. Just wanted to pull the minutes because I made some corrections after being posted. The corrections are that I changed the way the break was written right above 6.1. On page 4, that's on page 4. On page 4 of the minutes, I also changed 2023 to 2014. I believe it was where the first line, where chairperson, to choose a new chairperson. And then I added Kelly Munson to the attendee, and then I caught another one as I was making those suggested changes. And I changed where we were voting on Jen Goodland to be vice chairperson. It only said chairperson. So those were the corrections made.
If I may, there's also on 1.1 and 1.3. I think we replicated the previous minutes where I was late and chairperson or vice chair Anderson did a lot of the chair duties, but in actuality, last month I was here on time, so I did them. Minor, but incorrect.
Okay.
That information only?
Yeah.
Or do we vote?
No, we should take a motion on that. and-
Separate
and
motion?
Approve the board minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move we accept item 3.1 with the corrections noted.
I second.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Director Belfay.
Aye.
Director McGreen.
Abstain.
Sorry. Secretary Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Goodland.
Aye.
And Chairperson Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 4 ayes and 1 abstain.
Now would be committee reports, which we have none. And old business. We don't have any representatives from Paradise Community Center. New business. 6.1. Approved grant management.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Can you back up just briefly to item 5? Yeah. I've seen there's no representation here for this community center folks, but I'm somewhat surprised. We tabled this meeting. Contacting the staff informing what's going to be on this meeting. This is a surprise to me that they're not here.
They were notified at prior to the last meeting and check in with that they would, because they would not have a representative, they'd be moved to this meeting. But we didn't hear back from them. One of the directors had heard from them that they didn't know about that. And so we had a follow-up with them and they are unable to come tonight. So I think a verbal notice was provided to them, but
Verbal.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, I didn't send an agenda to them. If they're presenting,
Typically, it is a standard practice. It's correct.
I was under the impression that they would be here in February. So there was a lot of misunderstanding for this meeting.
Well, I'm getting somewhat concerned because I don't know where they're at on the project and in our relationship with us or you. And what can we do to encourage them to reemphasize that joint dialogue? I don't know. Someone come over to the full board on this? Or?
Unfortunately, I don't have any insight to offer. I did not attend the last one, which was in December, in the beginning of December. So I don't know.
We
I mean,
did
we can
have,
certainly kind of find out. But
we had a meeting with staff and their representatives in December. It was right after their last board meeting, inviting them to the last meeting and somehow missed their calendar. So I don't know what to say. I mean, we provided, from my standpoint, actually, by inviting them abundantly in the last meeting, making it clear that we would have them on the next agenda. To me, it didn't seem like there would need to be additional notification, but that clearly was not the case. So,
Well, I would suggest that given the recent history, we would should probably redouble our efforts to let them know of the meeting. Probably as soon as tomorrow, let them know we've tabled it to February, and then probably with a follow-up a week before the meeting, remind them that they're being agendized for a presentation. And if they fail to make that meeting, I don't know.
They know that they're on February 14th. Unfortunately, it's Valentine's Day, so we'll see what the turnout is.
Quick point of order. Can you hear me? This is Christy.
yes, Christy.
Thank you. Al's microphone needs to be swapped out because when he speaks, it sounds very garbled. I can hear only about 2 words with any kind of clarity anytime he speaks. So, and I saw a Q&A from John S. indicating the same. Everyone else is quite clear.
Thank you. Stick.
Yeah, all right, let's move along to new business. Item 6.1, approve grant management consulting services.
Hi, everybody. Again, this is Christy. I'm sorry I'm not able to be present for tonight's meeting in person. My caregivers for my children are currently overseas, so I'm playing single mom role tonight. But with that, I would reference, the staff report. And also I have some supplemental details that may be of interest to board members. I know that typically the board's preference is to have legal counsel review the agreements. We don't currently have the legal counsel hired yet officially. I think that's close to happening, but this agreement, the draft agreement in your packet, was generated from the same agreement that our previous legal counsel had created as kind of a boilerplate template agreement. So the scope of work is different.
Christy, let me add something to that.
Sure.
So as part of working with our legal counsel, we had developed really a system on our agreement. So we wanted to have, I don't think boilerplate's the right answer because that kind of implies more fill in, I think, but this is like virtually unchanged other than the names and the term of it. What is different is the scope of work. And that was how these were engineered, is that we would have a standard approved to form and content front section of it with all the indemnity language and some of the other things that are in there. And then the document itself refers to the scope of work. We rarely had comments from our legal on scope of work. That was left up to us and the partners. So that might help give some context.
Thank you, Dan. And speaking to the broader staff report, essentially the district currently has 17 active grant projects. It's a lot to manage, and that coupled with regular staff duties, it's staff prepares the quarterly reports, to maintain compliance with the grant agencies. We request reimbursement and it's off to the grant agency, and that's kind of okay, good, that one's done, let's move on to the next thing. There was a couple of mishaps where the grant agency representative, upon following up, realized, oh yes, you did send it, I didn't see it or receive it, and therefore we're going to put it, expedite the process of review and whatnot. But those kind of mistakes are timely, they're impact the district fairly significantly, as we just learned from Mr. McCourt's presentation. We're expending funds, and seeking reimbursement is pretty critical to the success of our projects and our continued cash flow for operations. So the consultant coming on board, I think, would be hugely helpful. We've worked with this particular consultant on the Cal Recycle grant, and it was flawless. This person stepped in, wrote most of the grant with some staff support, and then executed and managed the grant, upon award. And everything was delivered on time. We met the full scope. We achieved the maximum threshold of our grant award. And that consultant's fees were paid as part of that grant. So, not all of our grants are allow for administrative cost reimbursement. The state park grant, for example, is not one of those, but Elements is, then Friends in the Fields is, and a significant portion of all the other grants, like the BRIC grant, for example. So a lot of them do have it. We are looking for a not to exceed amount of $15,000. That's over a 3-year period. I don't anticipate that we would, if the board approves this, the district manager to, finalize the agreement, it wouldn't be an even split of 5,000 this year, 5,000 next year, 5,000 in the third year. Most likely it would be kind of heavier up front because we're asking the consultant to set up the timeline for each grant. That requires an investment of time for that individual to come in and review all the grant agreements, understand the scope of work, translate that into an online system for grant management, like project management software of some sort, that then assigns tasks so everybody knows what they're responsible for, what the deadline is. I think, you know, as this year we are entering into the development phase of some of these grants. I mean, Elements is ongoing, it's a program. But as we progress into the more development oriented projects like Lake Ridge, those timelines are going to be extremely critical, and knowing what all the steps are, what we can pick away at now, you know, because it's not necessarily sequential, right? Some things we can work on simultaneously with other tasks associated, you know, in a different phase or whatever. But it's just a lot to manage. And I think having an expert in the field who's done this work for quite a long time would be hugely helpful to staff and help ensure that we get more timely reimbursements. I will also note that, if you bear with me for 1 second, Ms. Arbuckle is currently working with the town of Paradise, the city of Oroville, city of Napa, city of American Canyon, county of Napa, California Vocations, New Beginnings Housings Foundation, Santa Vista Alviso Foundation, and the Conscious Container. Those are some of the clients that this person is working with now. So, you know, no other special districts, but, you know, some municipalities like cities and town of Paradise. So I think there is some relevant experience, you know, that demonstrates capacity to do this type of work. But with that, I will be happy to answer your questions.
Excuse me, I was just going to add a couple more things to it. Ms. Arbuckle was previously of North Valley Waste. Oh, sorry.
Northern Recycling and Waste
Northern
Services.
Recycling, yeah. And also one other thing I want to point out on page 22, there is a provision that's typically built into our agreements for potential for an extension that was changed to 2 years instead of 1 year. One other thing I wanted to make clear is this is a not to exceed contract. It's essentially falls under the category of time and materials. So if it's not expended, if there aren't hours, in this case, not much materials, a whole lot of time is what it would be focused on. So if there are items that we decide not to use this contract, there aren't hours expended, there's no expenses. Predominantly, many of our grants we've built in management funds, so this would be cost reimbursable for the most part, except for perhaps a couple of items that we may need help with. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of point out those things. Thank you.
I think this is a huge need. Grants are very complicated, and to have somebody who has the knowledge and expertise would be, I think it would save money over time. I just want to clarify, and maybe I'm misreading the chart. I'm looking specifically on page 6 of the consultant agreement, where it says services are billed monthly at 5 to 20 hours a week at a rate of $129 per hour. That would only give 38 hours a year based on a 3-year contract and that doesn't seem like enough time for like it to not exceed the $15,000. Does that make sense? So if she's charging $129 an hour, which that's, you know, a value that I think we should pay, but then to only get her 40 hours a year.
Yeah. And Chrissy may have some comments on this. I know that there was a question that we posed to her as far as what might be a background sort of maintenance on these grants. And so I think that's where that might come from. We did talk about ramping up at the beginning to get oriented to the grant. So we expect quite a bit kind of, and Christy mentioned this, kind of front loaded on her reviewing the grants and the quarterly reports and just some of the templates the state might have that we're supposed to use. So I think there's probably more hours than that. Christy, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll just say that, we were trying to be conservative. It seems like a big ask, and as I said, I think the majority of the benefit is upfront in laying everything out very clearly so that we have that template. There are some grants that are less arduous to manage for reimbursement purposes, for example. Those maybe are things that we can continue to do in-house and just really call on this professional to do the more arduous reporting requirements. I spent about 5 hours this week working on the BRIC reporting and reimbursement request. That's within reason, but the elements program, that took me days and days to do. So I think I'm probably not answering the question. I mean, maybe it does require more, but it seemed like a good starting point to get the system up and built, and then see from there, if it's manageable for staff, or if we call on her sparingly for certain projects.
So Chrissy, let me interrupt a second here. So,
Okay.
I think to address Director Goodland's comment, the way it's written right now, it's limited to 5 to 20 hours a week. And I don't think that's the intent.
I don't think so.
So
Yeah,
I think it's what we really should perhaps even strike that line, because it does have a total not to exceed cost, or add some caveats to that. But I think that right now, what that specifies, let's say that she worked 40 hours this first week here on it. She could only build 5 to 20 hours.
Yeah, and 5 to 5 hours. If I guess it's just a clarity on if she's billing the minimum of 5 hours a week for a year, that's $33,000 times 3 years. So I just like the clarity there on that would be helpful.
One other thing to note, I mean, that's in her proposal, not in the agreement, but yeah, we can definitely work through that with Ms. Arbuckle. There is also something that needs to be done about Exhibit B, which is, lays out the tasks and how things are to be paid. Because Ms. Arbuckle would invoice us monthly for any services that were rendered during the course of that month. And so, but as our agreement reads, it's paid when the task is complete. And some of these tasks will be happening simultaneously. So we can't wait to pay the consultant, until the full task is complete, because that might be, even outside of the 3-year period that we're, looking to have this agreement cover that term.
I have a question in regards to that same line. Is that $15,000 out of the PRPD budget, or does that include the grants that are cover the administrative hours? So is that, I guess what I'm trying to say, is that $15,000 for grants that don't cover the administrative hours, or is it just all of the money, period?
So for the most part, almost all the grants that we can get administrative costs paid, or in some cases, either staff or other outside resources, we try and get those funds. Each grant's a little bit different. So for example, that BRIC grant has a lump sum dollar amount based on your total grant. So that comes sort of out of that proceeds, but it's not an hour for hour one.
So
in other case, sorry, go ahead.
So the first part you said about a lot of the grants have administrative costs covered.
Yeah.
So is that part of that 15,000?
That's the intention, but we didn't want to limit it in case we have a grant that is arduous to administer. We would be better off with our staff time, devoting our staff to other needs in the district, or even actually getting the project completed, rather than diverting it back to reporting, which can be its own challenging operation.
No,
So-
I think this is an excellent thing to do. I totally agree with Jen. I think it will save money and it will allow staff to do other things that are just as important that might not be getting done on time because of being in the middle of 5 grants at once and keeping track of what's done and what's not done and what's reimbursed and what's not reimbursed. And I envision this crazy spreadsheet for what she's this.
And one of the things I wanted to point out too is we wanted a very modest number here because we want to test it out.
Right.
And so there may be coming back to the board with an amendment on the dollar amount or some fine tuning, but the idea is that this would be kind of enough to get some work done that could help us and then see how it plays out.
Got it. Thank you.
One
I
other
just-
thing I would add, I'm sorry, Steve, I just wanted to mention that one of the things we talked to Ms. Arbuckle about is wanting to create greater transparency for the public into the status of the grants. And so that's the other exciting part that I think would come from, this timeline and deliverables and whatnot, then when we're actively we can better communicate the project timelines and deliverables and things that are happening like on our website or social media so the public is aware that we're making progress, because sometimes if they're not on our board meetings, they might not have an understanding of where we're at and think nothing's happening at all.
Yeah, and I agree with, I'm particularly looking forward to task 2, the dashboard, where we can at a glance see where we're at on each grant and relay that to the public. And on top of that, I've worked with Ms. Arbuckle for probably the last 15 years when I was with the county. Very professional. And I think her, if we agree to pass this contract, it'll only increase our bandwidth for grant management and likely open up the possibility of additional grants that we normally probably couldn't have managed with so many balls in the air.
So it's good months ago. I've shared this with the staff. At this point, because of necessity, but what would have been preferred, and this is just looking at past practices elsewhere. This was probably recognized months ago and probably should have been first brought to one of our standing committees, preferably personnel, where personnel could say, yeah, staff, you're overwhelmed here. You really need professional assistance or more part-time help or whatever the case may be. That didn't happen, but what I'm thinking tonight is that if we do approve this, we approve it with the understanding and based on some of the dialogue I've heard tonight, it sounds like more flexibility needs to be fleshed out between the consultant, if we hire her, and her staff in terms of how this will proceed, how she'll be paid, which grant she's going to have to do upfront more time as opposed to not, that type of thing. I'd like to see if we adopt this, we adopt it with the understanding that we're going to amend it subsequently to this adoption within a not too distant period of time. And during that process of working on the amendments, the administrative staff include one of the standing committees to work on that as well, so that it comes back to the full board with the necessary changes to really better fine-tune this thing, so we do have transparency and a clear understanding of all the parties concerned, how to proceed. Aside from all that, I'm just kind of curious. Jennifer worked with us, obviously, on our grants for recycling and everything. I don't remember, none of the capital members, she wasn't getting $129 an hour for that work. It was probably a lot less back then. I don't know. But I'm just not. And I don't see Jennifer here tonight. I don't know if she was encouraged or discouraged to come tonight, but how did she come up with $129 an hour? I'm just kind of curious. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we need the expertise. We need the help. And I'm all for that. And I like the idea that a lot of the grants and staff tries to do this. The majority of them that have funding within the grants for admin work will probably go towards her assistance. But there's going to be times when she's gonna have to do it when it's gonna come out of our general fund. And that's, I appreciate the staff being cautious about that because we can't lose that side either. But that's kind of where I'm at.
I could just anecdotally, I can say, when I left the county, the going rate for third-party grant managers was in the 90 to 100 ballpark. That's 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Okay,
So given that, this looks like it within the realm of realism.
that helps.
Just another grant organization we've been working with. It's a much larger organization. Their principal was at a higher rate.
Oh, yeah.
So it's ballpark ish on it. So certainly, and I think that's part of this testing out. We'll see how it goes. So oftentimes when consultants set a rate, there is a certain level of expertise and you're not paying for additional hours to figure out some things. So if we're not seeing that reflective on the rate, you could hire someone at a cheaper rate, then it costs you more because they're just learning.
Right.
I will say that this item wasn't brought up specifically with personnel, and yet we've had a lot of conversations over the past year about staffing and additional resource needs, and committee members can attest to that. That has been this isn't far from those conversations that we've had.
Do we have any public comment?
None at this time.
So, Mr. Chair, the staff is asking us as a board to authorize the district management, I assume Dan and then Christie, to finalize an agreement with this consultant. That tells me that perhaps that process, if we authorize that, you can further refine these documents above and beyond what we just got tonight. Is that correct?
Yeah, the intent was to have, like some of the comments tonight on the clarification on that hourly rate or the hours that she can charge to it, things like that might come up. And so that was intended as not a straight up approval, but an authorization. So we take those comments and fine tune it.
This says draft written all over it. So
yeah.
The start date to be tonight for her? Couldn't we wait until March that all out to some extent?
I think that the changes are essentially minor, and we'd love to get her started right away. So, conceivably with the changes that I've heard tonight, that we're hammering it out in the morning and she's working in the afternoon. I don't see that the start date is really material on it.
Okay. How about is it that also through a personnel committee?
I as part of the motion that
Finalization of the document.
So
we have some internal board understanding of where it ends up.
if I can suggest this, we have the document tonight. I did not hear that many concerns, comments. We could certainly bring back the finalized document. I'd love to get this started because we have immediate.
Suggesting we get started. I'm suggesting is that we authorize it tonight. As you proceed with the finalization, you include the personnel committee in the finalization of the document. That's all I'm simply saying.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering about the timing because I think we have a scheduled later on this month, but that sets back a couple of weeks of work rather than.
No, it doesn't. You can she could start immediately if we authorize this tonight. It's just that you're going to finalize the document. Yeah,
a ratification.
I guess from I'm misunderstanding this because usually when from the contractor side. So if they have a document, we have authorization, but they don't have a signed contract to begin work that doesn't have draft on it. I certainly wouldn't do work until that draft went away and both parties signed. So I think that would be my suggestion. If the intent is to delay it and have it finalized, then that's probably kicking it back a few weeks. If we can finalize it with any comments we get tonight and then have it reviewed at the committee level, that'd be my suggestion. we certainly are doing a review right now. So, I'd hate to have another process inserted to it. Meanwhile, we have some reports and needs happening right away.
Well, I've heard dialogue, but I haven't heard any changes made to the documents other than just dialogue.
I think the one thing that I heard was the
Yeah,
hourly
that's
rate.
one of them.
So I did not hear any other comments or changes to it. So if there are changes, that's what part of this authorization is intended to
It
get
was
those
also
tonight.
Exhibit B that we were gonna update that language so it doesn't read that each task has to be completed before she can bill for services rendered.
I mean, I'd be happy to entertain any sort of changes to this and work through it. It's just a challenge for me to delay it a couple of weeks.
Can the motion include, I didn't hear anything that says we can't finalize it, but there was a lot of talk about once she dives into what she's looking at, what the district has, there might be some adjustments that need to be made. So can we add that kind of statement to the motion and then ratify it if necessary based on when Jennifer gets started and starts going through all the weeds, what she comes up with, the flowers that she finds in there that we can, is that, because I agree with you,
Yeah.
but I mean, we need to finalize it so you can get her on board and so she can dig in and.
Yeah. And certainly I don't mean to discount it. If there's any concerns or changes, then absolutely we need to go back to the drawing board, so to speak. But if there's minor comments, and we could certainly bring it back for, vetting by the board, by the committee to dive into it and then kind of monitor it as we go. I suspect that as we go on this project, the products are what's going to be interesting. So Ms. Arbuckle will do the review of the grant, kind of size it up, scope it up. And a lot of firms, just think about other projects, project scoping, if it's a large project, that's a separate contract altogether. That's not what we're asking. We want her to get just oriented to it and then start making some production on it. I think the dashboard and some of the other items would certainly be worthy of coming back to the committee. I would just hate to kind of stall it out for, I haven't heard a lot of comments tonight on.
Well, if we're looking for a specific comment on Exhibit B, I would just strike the last line.
On where?
Services are billed monthly at 5 to 20 hours, just strike that.
Yeah, that was my suggestion earlier. I don't think I made it clear, but it's a not to exceed amount for the contract. I think it just clouds it up.
Okay, I make a motion that the board authorizes the district manager to finalize an agreement with the consultant of Jennifer Arbuckle Consulting with striking the last sentence on page 6 of the agreement that says services are billed monthly at 5 to 20 hours a week, etc. And that if there's any changes that come up once Jennifer Arbuckle dives in and it needs ratification between what she finds, that they bring that back to the committee and then the board or the board.
I second that. Excellently stated. Thank you.
Do you want me to write it down for you?
Yeah, perhaps we could simplify it because I think what the details, I think we got, strike the language on that. I think what Sarah's asking for is and let me repeat back, authorize district manager to finalize agreement with consultant with changes noted. Will that do it?
Changes noted.
Oh, just in our discussion. I don't think we need to specify out the exact wordsmithing, basically strike the language on page, 6, last line, we'd have to go through that whole thing, but I think we got the identification, but perhaps it's just finalize the agreement with the changes noted and also concurrence with the consultant, maybe.
That works. Thank you.
Director McGreen, Director Belfay,
Aye. We didn't have we did have a second. Sorry. Aye.
Secretary Rodwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Goodlin,
Aye.
Chairperson Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
Moving along, assigned standing committees. Does anyone have any? Objections to the assigned committees?
I don't specific have objections to the committees. However, the third Thursday at that time might pose a conflict for the Finance Committee. I am generally in a Zoom meeting between 3 and 4:30 on the third Thursday. So Al, if you're flexible, we can pick another same in that morning or midday, or
How about we just change it to the second Thursday of the month?
that would work too.
If it's not in conflict with any of the other standing committees. Will that work for you,
Yes.
fellow finance member? Does that help staff?
Second Thursday would work.
I guess that begs the question. We haven't locked in all the committee meetings for the full calendar year yet, have we?
I mean, we were waiting for
For this
tonight,
tonight.
yeah, and just for things like that. So if there's a conflict, we certainly didn't want to have it loaded up the committee member. Yeah, I was gonna ask what time, afternoon on that?
Well, the only thing I can think of a potential conflict is independent of the standing committees. Well, maybe staff already handles this. When we had, what am I trying to say? We have it's not among these. Don't we have a liaison committee with the town of Paradise? Is that on here?
You know, I think those times have been dynamic, and so I think they're trying to figure out. I think Sarah does have the initial dates of the first one lined up.
But I mean, isn't it normally included amongst those that are appointed by the chair? Who's on that committee? I don't see it on here.
If you look at page
on-
28, there is a mid page. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let's see, Town of Paradise, a committee, community liaison assignments, Town of Paradise,
So
McGree
it's
and
there.
Bay. That's where.
Is that the intent of that liaison
Yes,
committee?
that's right.
Okay, anyway, I don't know when they meet. Hopefully they don't have a conflict with any of the standing committees, but that's probably coordinated internally with staff, right? Right?
Town of Paradise Liaison Committee. I don't know when their meetings are.
Try to coordinate with you and through you, what you do with Dan's help is you make sure that whatever they suggest, it doesn't conflict with any of the standing committees' regular meetings. That's what I'm getting at. So we're okay.
With them present.
Right, right. So I'm changing this one committee, the finance committee, hopefully will not create a problem. That's all I'm trying to tell. Okay.
Yeah, we were hoping to get one in January, but the other, our counterpart with the town, was unavailable for the month, basically. So, that kind of shot it into February. And so I think, Sarah's right that part of that was with, Mary and Al, since you're assigned a liaison committee, working out with the best, agreeable time on it. But they do run it by us first to see if we have any just basic conflicts.
Right. With the Recreation and Park Committee, is it possible to do at 1:00 PM on the fourth Tuesday? Because I have a standing thing at 3:30 on the fourth Tuesday. Would that work for you, Robert?
I'm good with that.
Okay. Would that work with your calendar so far?
It's filling up, but so far it looks pretty good. So you said that the fourth Wednesday or fourth Wednesday or Thursday?
It says the fourth Tuesday at 2:00, and I'm asking if it can just be changed to 1:00.
I think that's fine.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Wait, what was the agreed upon time for the finance committee, the second Thursday at what?
Well, I don't know what's better for, well, they shut the office down here at 3 in the afternoon, you know.
I'm good with any time during Thursday of the month.
All right, well, heck, let's make it 3:00 if the staff will accommodate it instead of 4.
I think that works ideal for staff. Thank you.
Okay.
And one more question, do these start in January?
Yeah, we're hoping to get them kicked off right away. That was the hope on tonight. Once we get them out, Sarah will kick out appointments to everybody with the Zoom link on it, and just have us ready for the year. I think it's been very helpful when we've done that. There's changes, there's things that come up for people, but I think it's nice to have it locked into the calendar pretty securely. Thank you.
Sarah, make sure your mic is on when you're talking.
Well done, Mr. Chair. Good comments.
Wait, are we doing anything with personnel or are we good there?
Mr. Chair, I did one addition or omission that we had on our community liaison assignment. So I know that a couple of directors have been very involved with, especially when we developed the memorandum of understanding with Magalia Community Park. And so we could just simply add that to it if the directors that have been involved still want to continue as that sort of liaisons.
That was yourself, wasn't it, Mary? And I guess I was involved too, wasn't I? How soon I forget. Well, with that in mind, Dan, I'm wondering also, should we entertain a liaison with, well, maybe not. I don't know, Hunter Uncovered Bridge or the two organizations down there in the Butte Creek Canyon or not?
You know, I right now we're having a lot of discussions with us and staff. I think certainly we'll pull in from time to time. We've done this already, board members as things kind of develop. So I don't think we need to assign it. I think that the meetings are very intermittent, for one thing, and they've been really good about providing us information. By the way, they are going to give us a presentation. I think in April. So I'll check, but both organizations are going to come up and they wanted to share. There's a lot of neat developments going on right now. And so they wanted to share some information with our board. Appreciate the support they received from our board too. So I think it's April is the date where we talked with them about.
Moving on. Approve the short list of pre-approved contractors.
Wait, we need a motion for the standing committees.
I don't think that's the information only.
It's a chair prerogative and
Put that, sorry.
Does anyone have any problems with the short list contractors?
so why don't you just give a brief update or a overview of the process? Because I think it's been some time. 2016 was the last short list that we did. But just give a little overview of the process.
Okay, I mean, just basically going through the report in brief, you know, we brought it here in April. What I was going to put in the newspaper, you guys approved it. I sent it to the Chico ER, who then also put it in the Orville Mercury Register. That was ran for 2 weeks in both places. Sorry, 3 days a week for 2 weeks in both places. We got everything that you see on the short list are basically who sent everything back. We worked with a couple of them. Obviously, you'll see the names. Most of them are in Chico, some are, surrounding cities. I don't know what else you want me to.
We try to do a wide distribution. So if we had contact, or even if we didn't have contact, we knew that someone who was in the area, we'd send out emails as well. So it wasn't just out on the list there.
We try to find people within an hour to 2 hours, just in case there was some kind of emergency. Like we needed them right away and they could either come up or, take a call right away. So we didn't go crazy into like San Francisco or anything super south.
May I ask a couple of questions on that? Appreciate the briefing, but I think there's more to it than what you've just shared this evening. First and foremost, the board was asked to authorize the RFQ back in April of 2023, which we did, the board did. And staff, you proceed with sending out the RFQ and having it put in a notice, I guess, in the local media, which is fine. What I need to do is refresh our memories. What was the cutoff date for consultants to submit their packets in line with the RFQ?
I want to say it was mid-June. We gave them about a month.
You gave them a month, okay? And
Yeah.
did all of them that submitted, did they submit in that time period within that deadline?
I think all of them except for North Star, who we invited later on.
You invited after the fact, okay.
Yeah.
And last but not least, I could be wrong, but this is 4 primary categories, but it seems to me the RFQ, you asked for a lot more than just these categories, did you not?
We did, and we didn't get any responses.
That's worth sharing with the board in future staff reports. If you have that process and you get those results, let it be known
Okay,
because
we are going to be bringing that back for arborists, construction workers, electricians. That's going to be an RFP this year.
Right.
I think we received one arborist, but I've already talked to him and told him that we're going to be pushing out a completely different RFQ for different services, emergency services.
I see where I'm coming from. That's helpful to us if you tell us, because if there's something we run across contact wise, maybe we can embellish and encourage other categories of contractors, consultants, so forth, to be wary of the fact that we're a viable district that they might want to entertain doing work for. So the type of thing.
I think it's because we put a driving distance on it. I think that's why some.
So right on the RFQ?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep, the one you guys approved. Yeah.
Guess I forgot about that. It's been just too long. But
And frankly, I think that the timing of it was as a lot of those, the trades basically. So
right.
a lot of those folks were busy at that time. I even think maybe had this wrong, Valley Contractors Exchange too, which is usually a good place to do it. I think they were looking for actual work, actual projects, or they were busy because what our RFQ was basically on-call repair, maintenance type things. So they, a lot of them opted and looked at that, said, look, I'm not going to mess with the on-call job when I have a 6-week job stacked up till December, so I think that was a new addition for us. Arborists had been on there before, but we had one apply for it.
It would be nice to get those again. And then also it would be nice if we had architectural design firms of some kind. Well, where are they? Embodied in the civil engineer listing?
Yeah, some of the landscape architects had some of that, and then some of the civil engineers.
Okay.
We didn't call that out. We didn't call that out per se, because a lot of those were folding into other.
Well, that's true, but there are some standalone architectural firms, I imagine, too. It's just that, don't get me wrong, I just think in the not too distant future, we're going to be building a new park. We're going to be bless your heart. You try to get this short list in place. This is a good start. Sounds like you're going to go out again and try to get the other categories as best you can. I appreciate that. It's important, as we know. So tonight you want us to adopt this list, right?
Yes.
You want it good for how long? 5 years, does it say?
Yeah.
If we were to adopt it, does that lock us in, or can we entertain any other parties that come along during that 5-year period?
Yeah, you mentioned the deadline before, and we did have a deadline for submission, but yet that wasn't part of this process. So we just want to make sure we had a good pool and complete information. They had insurance, they had
Right.
a viable track record. They're within a close distance. That was another thing that was important to us. We did not want to pay for travel time. So that was kind of like restricting it to a pretty immediate area. Certainly, I think as needs change, or, I think what happened last time on some of our list here, our landscape architects, for example, I think diminished to 1 or 2 that were available
Right.
out of originally 4. So
Right.
I think it's very good reason to bring back if we see some changes either on the list on their side or additional professional services we might need.
This list is much longer than our last one. I had to completely had to like tone down all the font and everything to fit everyone on here. I think we had like 3 or 4 in 3 different categories. And so this is a full page. So we got a lot more feedback this time around, but
Good.
Like to entertain a
Mr. Chair, do you open up to anybody who's online and wishes to speak to this matter?
Is there any public comment?
No public comment.
oh, his hand's up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just want clarification on what is the dollar amount that this would be not coming before the board? So, if we need somebody to do something, a couple hours of work or a couple, days of work. And at what point is this going to come before the Arbuckle contractor just came before you? I'm trying to understand how many taxpayer dollars are going to these pre-selected firms without it coming up for deliberation.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the intent on the short list is really for short-term, quick turnaround projects, in which case it would be costly for the district to put out an RFP and have a full-blown process for something that may be a couple $100 worth of work, and we may not get a response. So that's the intent on this. For the most part, and here, hence my hesitation on say architects, for example, those are typically part of larger projects, in which case we will have a full RF request for proposals that will be put out. So it's those larger projects. These are typically kind of smaller ones. We need a drawing for a gate. We need a pad that requires it exceeds the town's limits on needing engineering or something like that for a picnic site or something. So these are typically kind of small scale projects, and they abide by our purchasing policies, which actually for professional services has quite a bit of leeway on it as long as it's within our budget area. But we try and bring a lot of these things back when they're more involved back to the board.
If there's no more comments, somebody want to make a motion?
My mic working to approve the short list as presented.
Second.
We'll call
Madam
vote.
Clerk, roll call vote.
Director McGreen,
Aye.
Director Belfay,
Aye.
Secretary Rodwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Goodland,
Aye.
Chairperson Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
Okay, that brings us to item 6.4. Consider cybersecurity policy. Dan?
Chrissy, do you want to address the board or should I?
I'm happy to. Yes, we've decided to pull this from tonight's agenda because there has been new requirements associated with agencies, organizations that utilize Department of Justice information sources. And so we need to make sure that the draft policy that had been presented is in line with those requirements. We required Department of Justice background checks for any potential staff new hires. So as an agency, we need to go back and make sure that we're aligning the policy proposed with those additional requirements. Also going to replace company with district.
So we'll bring that back next month. I don't know if directors had a chance to look at it, they would like that reviewed at a committee level. We just thought that the additions are pretty straightforward. There are some, probably 10 bulleted items, but it's a substantial change to the length of document. So we thought it just made sense to bring it back next month.
Can I just ask a quick question? Was this developed from some kind of template that was already in place by like CA?
Combination of some sources and our computer person as well had some suggestions on it. So it came from a template that was available to us.
It's definitely needed.
Since this touches on disciplinary and background checks, should this go to the personnel committee?
I think that's appropriate. That would be a good place to review it.
Well, that brings us to the district report.
All right. So I'm going to kick it over to staff for some reports. I know that Jeff has, well, actually not full report yet, so I won't get to there, but maybe we'll start with our recreation side of things with Scott and Jeff. And by the way, just one big thing, I know that we are looking to have a very animated, vigorous discussion with some more information on the ice rink. And we'll have a special meeting on that. What's the date?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I sent everyone an email and I was hoping for a reply. I sent it about 3 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
today.
so pretty late today. So we're looking at what days were we?
It was Thursday, the 18th, either at 8:30 in the morning or 3 p.m.
Next week.
Next week.
Well,
I mean,
perhaps not, but we have some time constraints from the manufacturer. So that's kind of some driving on it. We had a lot of challenges. We were going to do it on Wednesday. The building's full. So we had a lot of challenges for that. So as you guys are looking at your calendar, perhaps you can let Sarah know after Scott gives his report.
Good evening, directors. If you were to look at your packet, you'd notice during or under the parks and during the not parks. Mark's got a bunch of stuff there, but under recreation, there's not a lot. The time frame that I had set aside to do that this month, I got COVID. So verbal report this month, we had the elements retreat, the next form of kickoff. We wrapped up that program for the year with Kelly Mudson at the helm now. Everything looks good there. With a Healing Trauma Through Nature program, ran 12 field trips in the month to different places, some of which were ice rink field trips, some of which were rescheduled. And it was essentially just the perfect month to end a really, really productive year. One thing we also started last month is looking for activity guide information, and we're trying to move up that activity guide one more month. I think it was Director Goodlin at one point that was like, it'd be nice to get things out before the classes started. And in last year, we gained a month. This year, it looks like we're going to gain another month. So instead of getting the activity guide out in March, we should have it wrapped up by the end of January. And what's key to that is that the board and administration continues to find ways to help us scale the work that we're doing administratively so that we have the time to really focus on those things. This will be Kristen DeHart's first activity guide with us. So look for some polish in there with some of her special skills coming on board. Dan, is there anything I'm missing in there?
No, I'll just bring up, we are working on a rec program evaluation for the year. And that's something that I think is going to be really important for us to inform not only future activity guides, but direction of some programs and budget and that type of thing. So I think that's really an important thing for us, but it takes, at least as first round, it's going to take quite a bit of information we're developing. So I think as it rolls, and Jeff has experience with this already, right? Put out the poll report. We had some shifts in formatting and so forth. And it seems to be easier to do now than it was, just a short while ago. But I think that's going to happen with these other things. And the idea is to give us some big picture views of direction, performance of programs, something that we're going to do in an abbreviated way next week with the ice rink. So we're going to have to kind of cram in a lot of information there. And hopefully in future years, we're going to have a much more measured look at kind of the year ahead or the year behind and then the year ahead. So that's the intention of that.
And in that evaluation with the program evaluation, I know at one point you started integrating the staff, the soft cost, the staff costs, the electricity costs, in those programs. So that's all going to be incorporated in your evaluation.
Yeah, to the extent we can, some of those things like you're calling soft costs, kind of overhead costs, building costs and stuff. Yeah. So that's a little challenging to come up with. Yeah, I think that kind of informs like several other things that are coming up in the near future, our fee structure, and a bunch of other things. But, I think that it gives us a good first, there'll be some sections you'll see in there that aren't quite developed that in future years will be more developed. So
great. Good start.
Yeah.
Director, one of the things that I think we're proud to track, a lot of the costs that we infer are passed through. So we want to try and get every penny. One of the things that was an extensive amount of work for Christy and for staff was tracking every mile that the vans took someone on a field trip or an excursion. And since we had, we're over 100 now, going back and recouping those and charging them to the grants, that's how detailed we're going to be on these. So leaving no stone unturned.
Jeff, you want to give us a quick rundown? And I know that you're going to have more to say on the poll report, but just anything that.
Yeah, I can say a few things on recreation and come back up to the poll report probably. Okay. Like Dan said, we're going to have a more in-depth skating rink report at the special board meeting next week. Hopefully we're going to fit that in. Other than the rink manager, Kristen did write up a little thing on Paradise on Ice, and not too much has changed since we talked at the last meeting, honestly, just kind of the public's perception of it. And just in a nutshell, the participation has been lower. The sponsorships have been lower, and the participation and the income has been lower, but the expenses have also been lower. So that's going to offset that somewhat of what we're finding out so far. On programming side of things, besides some of the ongoing year-round classes like yoga, tai chi, judo, and dance, Christmas time tots was very popular. The Tiny Tots class they call Christmas time tots leading up to Christmas, where they have Santa come visit. They make presents for their parents. We had a total of 29 children participate in that program. They started up again this week, so that's happening. I went and presented the Butte County Fish and Game Commission grant Monday night, 2 nights ago. in person. And I've been doing that for years. It's to get money for a grant to purchase fish for Paradise Lake. And that was for 2025, the spring of 25. So we've already got some money for this year to purchase fish. And we've also, I'm happy to say that we've also got our allotment locked in through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife for 7,000 pounds of trout for this year, which is a big deal because those are the only plants we get at the lake. So those kind of, besides just for the kids fishing day, they have to sustain the fishing for the whole year. So any extra money we get for that is helpful. Like Scott said, the activity guide, we are working on that hard. The more we push it forward, though, it does get kind of hard because trying to plan out the pool and how many swim lessons we're going to have and everything with not even knowing who's going to be teaching them yet it's a little stressful. You're advertising for things where you don't even know who's running them yet, but that's what we've always done. If you guys have any questions, there's a few pictures in there of tiny tots. A couple of the events at the rink that have been popular, the field trips with the elementary schools, the Eras on Ice, Taylor Swift night was popular. And it's been kind of on and off. We've had a lot of rain. And we've had a lot of people having fun out there too. So.
By the way, I love that one picture, that girl with the crafts. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's fantastic. Figure 2. But her expression on there was great. We had a very vigorous discussion with staff today, talking about the ice rink, and just sort of had really great information. So I think we're trying hard to kind of hone that and bring you guys some information back on that. Well, Mark, come up here and give a little rundown. You'll notice this report's thinner than typical, perhaps not for December, because basically this packet has to be prepared in mid-December, and then we have a couple day turnaround to get it out, with a short start of the year here. I will mention this, but as Mark's coming up, that we have hint, someone elbow that guy. But I went up to Magalia Community Parks board meeting last month, and it was great. They had their cooking class, which we provided funding for, going. So they had 3 or 4 different groups. The kids were engaged. They looked like they had great instructors, sharing information, very positive atmosphere. So yeah, I was glad to see that. Good timing that I was made at the same night to their meeting that was going underway. So just want to report that back to you. I see there's a stray and there. So just strike that and with a period there. Mark, you want to give us a quick rundown?
Oh, well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory in writing there. I personally wanted to say just, that I appreciate everybody. And I think in the world today, everybody wants more, and it's me. And it's time every once in a while, it's nice to take a step back and realize how far we've come in 5 years. I was thinking a second ago, when we first came up here the following Wednesday after the fire, with Steve was out here and we were putting out, remember the bark out here was on fire still. And we were putting that out. And I think back how far we've come. It's come a long ways in 5 years. And a lot has happened in 5 years in our personal lives. We're putting those together, but we still show up. And I just think everybody that's on our staff, and I know the outside world don't always see it, but how much work they do. And it takes a lot of passion and dedication as a public servant to come in and do this and put your personal life together and also put a town back together. It takes a lot for everybody for everybody. But I just wanted to take a second to openly acknowledge that I appreciate everybody. And I just do, you stood through me when I was going through my things, and we've all had to do our own thing. But yet we still came here to board meetings. I remember we had to have them down there in Chico and still had board meetings. Everyone was displaced, nowhere to live, and still had board meetings. And we still came to work and got the parks together. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the staff that it's come a long ways in 5 years. a long ways. And the short list, I was actually surprised that we were doing one on the trades when I've worked with just about every person in the trade in the last 5 years. I had no idea about it. Maybe I could be part of that.
Reach out to everybody
Yeah, I guess I didn't see the note on it. I know maybe I can get with you on that because I know that not that they could be the only ones, but I know the ones that I've worked with that have been good. But yeah, I just know in today's world sometimes it's hard to take a step back and realize how far we've come. And we all want to go further, and that's what we're doing every day, but we've come a long ways in 5 years. Now to where we're just actually arguing, the worst thing is that the roads are tore up because they're doing underground. Yeah, it's come a long ways from where we were. That was the least of our problems 5 years ago, was with the underground and having to stop for some road work for that when it was homes being hauled away. So it's come a long ways. I'll take a little road work, but I have nothing else unless you can have something. Thank you.
Just an update on the path to the grotto.
Yeah, it's going to be a big reveal.
Okay.
It's
Keep
I
us
would put
posted.
it's better than it absolutely ever has been. It's like something out of a magazine now. It'll be jaw dropping when it actually comes all together. It's going to be much better than you ever thought it could be. I really built that up. We better do a good job.
What a teaser. You better deliver, Cobb.
Thank you.
A nice job on that, by the way. There's a lot of skills, hard work involved to get that thing just right. And they're doing it.
Just get a good photographer that can Photoshop it to look exactly how you just described.
May not need it.
I know. I just want to say, Mark, what you wrote was wonderful. And I appreciate you for having that consideration for everybody and everywhere we've come, how far we've come, because we all feel that way. And thank you for putting that in writing on this agenda. And I just have one thing, the Ridge Hiking Association, I see there's a kayak thing under here. And I just wanted to mention that some friends of ours went kayaking somewhere by the dam in the middle of salmon run season. And like salmon were jumping all over his kayak. And I thought that would be a good kayaking adventure if I can find out exactly where that was.
We do have that
here.
Yeah, down on the Feather. They're abundant. We had a couple of experiences with our youth crew that went out there. But we also had a class that was offered a tour. So that was much smaller on it.
It was on the district report
Yeah.
a couple months ago. The salmon run one, where they kayaked Feather River, Scott did, and
just a couple of other things on here. Probably due to have a presentation from Sophia, by the way. So I think that would be good. You can see there's some more activity going on here, especially different types of things with the volunteer program that I think is really important. And there's a workability student, which I need to find out some more about how that's working out. But that seems like a good opportunity that Sophia's mentioned a little bit, but maybe that could be something she gives an update next at a future meeting. I wish to have more news on this. We are tidying up some stuff related to the potential shop property. There is a couple of other outstanding issues going with that some deed related items that we need to remedy. I don't think anything significant, but it's just a little bit of a delay right here. We'll keep you posted.
Do you have any idea when escrow is estimated to close?
I was estimated to close last month, but there's
already closed? Because your written report says it's in escrow here.
I believe it's extended because we don't have all the paperwork there. So they haven't completed the transaction.
So you have no idea when that's going to be completed at this point in time?
I thought last month. I was wrong.
You thought, right.
Yeah. So we're waiting for this. They're trying to get the original deed. They will either go through an issuance of a bond for that deed, or track it down. So we're just trying to go the simple route on it. So
Which title company is working on this? Is it Mid Valley?
Mid Valley.
And we've already paid them, haven't we?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Lot line adjustment. I think, especially on the Parks and Rec Committee, folks know about the little squiggly line that we were trying to readjust. We have a simple pathway that was much better than the 3 or 4 hearings that were required, was originally quoted to us from the town. So it's in progress, and we hope it's finalized. It looks, by all indications, it looks like it is, but we'll come back with a final report on that. Happy to take any questions.
Well,
I'm sorry. One other thing I was going to mention on here is that we will have a mid-year budget update that'll come to our finance committee.
just if I
Next
could
meeting.
get an update on the Billy Park entrance property line, there was an encroachment that we were going to address with the encroacher.
Nothing to report right now.
Okay.
Was there a second Crane Memorial Park Volunteer Day on December 22nd, and how'd that go? Clearing the pathway for the right above the SEPA Workability Butte County Office of Education.
Yeah, Sophia, I know that was lined up. I don't know how it went.
Oh.
So other than what's in the report there. I know that our crew is going to be doing some extra work on there the upcoming months to get it cleaned up and the signs put in. And we will be doing a small amount of planting out there coming up. So.
Did I hear correctly earlier this evening from Meter, Jim, what his name? I thought I heard him allude to the fact that we just received our first installment of the property tax payment. Is that correct, Catherine?
Let's have Catherine come on up.
So yes, we have received our property tax. It'll be in the January deposits because I didn't get notified of it until after we came back from break. But yes, we have received our property tax. Yes, I don't know the exact dollar amount because I only glanced at it while I was trying to do something else, but it was approximately $1 million.
And I think the projection, Catherine, remind me, I think our projection that we had for our budget purposes and the recent county projection were pretty close. They were a small amount of difference, but do you recall what that amount was?
I think the difference was like 100,000 of what we projected and what they estimated. It's just 100,000 difference. Just. Yes, actually, they're projecting 100,000 more than what we were expecting.
Yeah, our estimate was low, so it's a pleasant surprise. Yeah. So if there aren't any questions, I'd love Jeff to come up and dig into the pool report.
Hopefully you guys had a chance to look it over a little bit. Excuse me. I can kind of go over some of the highlights and then look at the income and expenses and participation and then take questions to the best of my ability. So in the overview, basically, this has been the 5th summer since the campfire. Just something to note. We had a full aquatics program at both pools, including recreational swim, rec swim, adult swim, that's not listed on there, lessons, aqua aerobics, private rentals, and adult swim. And the Paradise Pool hosting 3 swim teams. One of the new ones, if you guys remember, was the Home Tech Charter swim team. Very small team down there on the number of individuals in each program area. You can see they only had 3 kids. So Those are all billed separately based on hours and their PG&E usage. I think one thing that we kind of take for granted too is we had no serious injuries at the pool. We had no one get hurt, no one go to the hospital. The chemicals were balanced. There was no problems with any of that. We have the dates of operation. Under programming and participation, one thing to note besides the swim teams is we had the Boys and Girls Club that used the Paradise Pool for their summer camp 3 days a week, and the Golden Feather Pool, Concal Pool hosted the Concal Golden Feather Summer Camp, I think they called it. And then there's a graph later that shows the participation, but you can kind of see the main numbers are in recreation swim, group lessons, some rentals. We had lifeguard training this year. I'll talk about that more. And then the swim team numbers and aqua aerobics, to point out the last one in that list there. At the Paradise Pool, 811 people participated. So maybe record numbers. Maybe even pre-fire. Maybe it is in here. Let me look in a minute. For the facility, again, I'd like to thank Mark and Ray in the parks maintenance. Mark. So like I said, it's not easy getting the chemicals right in the pool that size and the filtration. The pool is inspected by the Butte County Public Health Department, and we passed that. The heater stopped working, if you guys remember, the end of the 22 season, and it made the Paradise High School swim team have to end early. So we ended up getting a new high efficiency heater. It's already showing its value with utilities going down slightly from 22 to 23, even with a longer 2023 season. And that's gas. I'm guessing I was talking about there, not the electricity. Going on to the next page, the staffing, that was a big one. We went into the year with only 2 lifeguards returning from the year before. And luckily, our pool manager out at Concal, Amelia, went and got her lifeguard instructor training certificate in the off season outside of Sacramento. And she was able to do that and have a lifeguard training class because she had hers had expired to be able to teach that. So she went and got that certificate. We were able to hire 9 new lifeguards doing that. Anyway, with that, it was a lot of training hours in the pool and getting a lot of people up to speed, but they all did pretty good. The fiscal impact, the revenue for both pools increased over 2022. Concal is now above its 2018 levels, while Paradise is catching up to its 2018 income, and we'll look at that a little bit more in detail. We are going to see that we had increased labor costs, especially at the Paradise Pool. And like I said, we had a lot of new staff. We also paid for Amelia to take her class, and then we paid her to teach the class. And we had a lot of in-pool training with all those new staff. So that's a lot of the extra hours for staffing. And we stayed open longer this year. Whereas the year before, some days we had to close down because we didn't have enough staff, or we were understaffed to the point where this year we had plenty of staff. So more staff hours include lifeguard training and a longer season, repairs and maintenance, and chemicals. I was going to get Mark to agree with that, but if you guys remember, a couple of years ago, chlorine went up big time. There was actually a shortage on it. It was in the news and it was super expensive. Well, that hasn't gone down. The chemicals are very expensive for the pool. And we use those year round. They're not just during the aquatic programming during June, July, August. So that last sentence there, the cost to operate the Paradise Pool includes all expenses to run the facility for the whole entire year, not just the aquatics programming cost. So this is kind of a facility report when you get to the expenses. 23, 24, we raised a lot of prices in 22. We should probably look at that again. Rec swim's $4. We maybe go up $1 with that one. Probably be meeting with Dan and Christy on that. Recommendations for next season, without going through and reading all these are some of the things we talked about. We were able to purchase a CPR training mannequins this year. and updated the certification of our manager to be able to teach lifeguard. So that was huge. And the CPR mannequins were actually fairly inexpensive. I think they were like $400 or something. I don't know why we didn't do it sooner, really. We don't have very many of them, but, and then one thing we talked about actually at a meeting today with Kristen, the new events coordinator, is she's going to be working on a lot of sponsorships. And one idea we had was selling banners again to go on the fence down at the pool for sponsors. And we have some other ideas there. A few pictures, excuse me. Oh, and then under discussion there, it just talks about how we should have a good returning staff. Although Levi, our pool manager, is probably not coming back. He's going into firefighting, and he's been working on that for a long time. So as far as I know, we have Amelia coming back and lots of our younger guards. So we'll have to see what we're going to do there. We did have the Butte County Sheriff Department dive rescue team come to the pool before it opened and work on some training. I think that one where they're in that PVC pipe thing, it's simulating like a helicopter crashing into the water, and they're strapped in and they have to get out and do some things. I apologize for the graphs not being labeled. The first one's supposed to be attachment A. And what that is the attendance. So it starts out with, this is on page 74, the Concal attendance. And one thing to note is if you look at the total attendance, it's gone up, it's trending up. It's gone up every year. If you look at from 2019, obviously it went down after the fire. Then every year it's gone up to now. This is Concal up to 1,400, mainly due to recreation swim. And then getting down to the Paradise attendance, we've got the same thing happening there. If you look at the attendance starting in 2019, where it says total attendance, it trends up every year, which is a good thing. 1,200, 1,900, 3,000, 38, 51 this year. And then it kind of breaks down what those different people came from, mostly recreation swim. Aqua aerobics was huge, like I mentioned. It continues on page 76 with the swim teams and the numbers. Actually, those are the hours that they use the pool. So even though Home Tech only had 3 kids, they were in there almost half the time as the Piranhas. So they're hoping to get more people next year. The income and expense is the next page, number 77. And the Concal income is already up above the 2018 levels, which is great. Same thing there. It trends up every year. So do the expenses, not as bad at Concal as you're going to see for Paradise. But if you look at the income at Paradise, it goes up every year starting in 2019. And if you look from like 2021 to 2023, it doubles basically the income. So does the expense, unfortunately. And I can kind of, some reasoning for that. Well, those 2 notes down there too, it's kind of interesting. We started including all of the yearly maintenance and utilities in 2022. So the expense really jumped up in 2022. We started tracking the maintenance there for the whole year. And that note number 2, maintenance and utilities totaled $104,479. So that's, over 60% of it is maintenance and utilities. And like I said, it's for the entire year. Every time Parks Maintenance goes to the pool, they code it out on their timesheet. So it's like PP1, Paradise Pool 1. I'm not sure the exact code, but so somebody was probably down there today getting leaves and pine needles out of the pool. So that goes towards the expense to this. We use chemicals in the pool all year long, and we use the pump, not as much as we do when it's open to the public, but we have the pump on as well. I think it's every other day we run the pump still just to keep the water blue. The heater's off.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's saving a lot. But if we didn't use chemicals and the filter, the pump would turn green and black, and we'd have to drain the whole pool and scrub it out and stuff. So anyway, some of the some of the reasons again for the increased income, besides including all the maintenance utilities, we talked about chlorine, is the longer season, the lifeguard instructor training, and the lifeguarding class. And the pool manager who taught that, she's the highest paid of the whole program too. Let's see, the wages are up, obviously minimum wage is up, chemicals and the maintenance cost for the whole year is kind of what we figured those extra costs were.
I had a question, Jeff. Thanks, by the way. I think you're doing a really thorough job and a lot of very good information in here. I appreciate the recommendations. I was wondering about the heater and the chlorinator, which are both replaced in the last couple of years. If that's reflected in those expenses, or if they're considered a capital improvement. And that might be a
It's
question
not,
for Catherine.
right? Catherine, the heater wasn't included in the pool expenses. No. Do you remember that was like over 100,000 or 80,000? Okay. Okay.
I have a question. Great report, though.
Thanks.
Great information. But on the Concal pool, it has paid admission and pass admission, and then there's no rentals. And on the Paradise pool, it has rentals, but it doesn't have paid and pass admission. So what's the what is the pass admission? They get a pool pass from somewhere that doesn't create any income?
No, paid admission is people that paid right at the gate.
Right.
And pass admission is people that bought passes. And for whatever reason, at the Paradise pool,
It doesn't show.
that's just lumped into recreation swim.
Okay. And then Concal doesn't have any rentals. No groups or birthday parties that rent it for the summer or anything.
No.
Okay.
We actually had one rental in Concal in 23. That last line under Concal attendance.
Oh, I see it. It's in a different place.
That's one thing that really improved at Paradise is the rentals went from two rentals to 9 rentals.
That's good.
So, and with those, you have to have staff. So you have to have staff. A lot of them are people wanting to have field trips. And if all your staff are in high school, they can't come out and guard for the field trips.
Got it.
Very, very helpful. Also, I love a lot of your brainstorming ideas, especially like the banner sponsorship. I'm just going to suggest that you ask Rebuild Paradise Foundation to be a sponsor. And I mean, I'm just thinking outside the box of like what's popular and trending right now is polar plunge. And since the pool is not heated, making an opportunity in the winter months when you're not getting an income. I know that could be tricky with lifeguards and whatnot, but just an idea. But yeah, great job. I love the pool. It's sad to see such a big profit and loss, but it's such a heart of our community. And thank you for all your hard work behind it. I know that it meant so much to my own daughter to be able to have her first hard and good job there.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So one of the things that didn't make it into the report, thank you, Jeff.
Oh, the movie.
No, but yeah. One of the things that didn't make it into the report that the community is expressed interest in, and it doesn't really fit in like the aquatic park report, and it doesn't really fit in the pool report, is we have that sand volleyball court that's right there. And there's been several groups that have tried to get involved with us, and the timing hasn't worked out for whatever those reasons are. If we're in like the brainstorming, what's a great way to continue increasing funds there? If that's up and going, I can only imagine that's going to be a benefit, because it's a reason to hold tournaments there, et cetera, et cetera. It's also a beast of a project, and just one more thing that that we would have. And it's huge. So I don't really know where to take it from there. It wasn't really a Parks project, wasn't really a Jeff project, wasn't really. So just know that that's also floating in the ether, floating.
Know that you have a mom and representing moms here, the need for less like if there is any way to increase that,
Mhm.
you would max it out. But I know that also, you're projecting what you think you might be having with staff. So I know that's challenging, but I know that last year that was filled up super quick. And just the moms were like, oh my gosh, like I want my kids. And I saw that previously private lessons were really, really high prior to the fire. And now we don't have those. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And we just haven't put them back in. I don't know if it's because mainly we don't really have anyone that was interested in teaching them
Okay.
or able to, but I've already thought about adding a session of swim lessons.
And I wonder, Jeff, if it's just the nature of our current staff, I think we're so focused on just trying to get the regular hours going and
That's a
all of
good
that.
point. So independent of that, would it behoove us to possibly put out an RFP or whatever you want to call it and see if there's somebody out there that has skills and qualifications, and you offer them a contractual arrangement where they give the private lessons, we provide the facility, but they give the lessons and we get a percentage of their take. I don't know if that would find anybody if we tried that process or not.
I was just thinking about that as this came up. I think there's not elderly, but there's a lot of people, not teenagers, not 20 somethings, but people who have at one time had their WSI or lifeguard certification, and they might be in their 30s or 40s. They might be the baseball coach. They might be anybody that in the summertime, particularly teachers, who might want to make a little extra cash by being a contract swim lesson instructor.
Those are good ideas. We can look into that.
I know it's not that far off when Jeff's going to start doing recruitment on that. So if you guys, especially those of you that have former or current swim team connections, it would be good to get those in there. Just as an aside, there is a nationwide shortage of lifeguards. It still continues. It's still a challenge to get that. This last year seemed fortunate that we had an uptick in our staffing. So we could use more.
It was a little bit of a nail biter. It came down to, I think we finished lifeguard training in late May, early June, and didn't know exactly who we were going to hire from that pool of people. So it worked out good.
Jeff, one other idea comes up with these suggestions on recruitment is we had talked a little bit briefly last year, in the previous year about, oh gosh, here we go with bad puns, creating a pool of employees that from the different districts that maybe can work, and we kind of coordinate schedules and rotate that around. I know that could add a whole other level of challenge, and it could siphon off some of our staff if we're adequately staffed. But I don't know if has any.
We actually have done that. We've sent a couple guards down to guard for a party down at Durham, and the thing would be paying them too without fully having to hire them and do fingerprinting and the harassment training and everything that you have to do now. But something where we could maybe just do a trade where they work some hours and we work some hours there.
The only thing with that you're going to have to worry about with everything with Capri is now, like, anyone that isn't hired on as a PRPD employee has to have self-insurance. So if they're working with children, they have to have insurance on themselves for assault, which I don't know the pricing of that yet, but that is something that even like if we're going to hire someone to do private lessons, that gets tricky.
Yeah, it'd be better probably just to hire them as a PRPD employee. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through in this day and age. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And that brings us to board liaison reports. Mary, anything?
Nope, everyone was on holiday in December, including me.
Steve?
Nothing with the county. Was out at the Paradise Lake on Sunday. Probably at Sunday, it was probably like 2 feet from the top. I'm sure it's like 1.5 feet now. So it'll be a full lake.
Thank you. Jen?
I just went to a Firewise meeting today, and there are 8 in our area. So that's great because we had None. So that'll just help with insurance and keeping our community safer.
Al?
There was no Butte LAFCO meeting for the month of January. I did attend my one and only annual meeting with the Butte County Consolidated Oversight RDA Oversight Board. That was today, this afternoon. We only meet once a year, and what we do is we provide oversight and review and approval, if necessary, requested annually for through local agencies that had RDAs at one time that have all been dissolved. That's the city of Chico, the town of Paradise, and the city of Gridley. And what they have to do, those RDAs still have bond proceedings and so forth they got to pay off and so on and so forth. So we oversee that process because they're dissolved. Now, the successor agency to those RDAs are those respective municipalities. So they have that responsibility to run the gamut of the remainder of the outstanding indebtedness of those dissolved RDAs. I'll leave it at that. But anyway, it was a very productive meeting today. Unfortunately, I got adopted as a chairperson again. So, yeah. But anyway, the representation on that oversight board is you have representatives of special districts, you have representatives of municipalities, you have representatives of the school districts, both Butte College, as well as the K through 12 school systems, and then the general public. So it's a 5-member board. I don't know if I've ever shared this before. I always forget that we only meet once a year. So that's pretty much under liaison. There is something I'd like to share, though. Maybe you already know about this. I'm putting my LAFCO hat on now, but Butte LAFCO is going to have a meeting and a public hearing, their first meeting in February. And one of the agenda items that'll be on that meeting agenda will be what's called the Municipal Service Review, or the MSR, which has been prepared for the Paradise Irrigation District. Before we have that hearing, however, the consultant under hire that's prepared that MSR for PID is going to conduct a workshop session on January the 16th at the PID district office at 5 p.m. I would strongly suggest that our liaison on behalf of the board attend that workshop, and maybe even a member of staff. So we can, and the reason I suggest this is because of our relationship with PID and the services we do around the lake. It might be beneficial for us to know the contents of the MSR and see how that is addressed as it relates to us and PID, that type of thing. So I just thought I'd share that this evening.
Thank you, Al. And that brings us to board comment. Anybody?
I, along with Steve, attended the True Value Department, the True Value hardware store. I kept thinking department store. It's not, although it has a bunch of departments, and it was well attended, and it was foggy, or the clouds were sitting right on top of us, and it was cold and it was wet, but it was very well attended. So that was kind of exciting. And I did hear from Mayor Ron Lasan that there's 700 building permits in motion right now, which sounds, I mean, that's 1,400 people plus more that'll be coming in sometime this year, which is pretty exciting. And he said, so the store will be well used. Well, people will come buy stuff from it. And I'm really looking forward to what 2024 brings and all the exciting things that Park and Rec is doing and all of the staff is doing and what's going to happen to the town next. It's definitely moving.
I did learn that, and this might be general knowledge by now, that the Save More Market is going to turn into a holiday market with a full deli and, natural foods and organic. And so,
isn't that the
Lake Ridge, across the street from Lake Ridge Park.
Anything else? Well, I'd like to adjourn this meeting until our next regular meeting on February 14th, 6 p.m.